The store manager's voice boomed across the silent aisles. "Step back now, or I'll have you removed." But in her steady eyes lay a secret powerful enough to shatter everything. What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me, this is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The store sat on the corner of a forgotten street, its windows dulled by years of neglect and the creeping grime of urban decay. Outside, the wind howled with a bitter cold, slipping through broken seals and carrying with it the promise of an uneasy night. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered overhead, casting uneven, wavering shadows on cracked tiles and peeling wallpaper. Every sound, a creak of the old wooden shelves, the distant drip of a leaking pipe, the soft murmur of the city beyond, conspired to create an atmosphere heavy with secrets and unspoken history. Aisha stepped into the store with a measured calm that belied the storm brewing both outside and within her. Her skin, rich and dark as polished ebony, seemed to absorb the dim light, giving her an almost otherworldly glow. She moved slowly down the narrow aisle, her eyes sweeping over rows of neglected merchandise as if searching for something hidden in plain sight. There was a deliberate grace in her steps, a silent determination that suggested she carried burdens and secrets far greater than the ordinary troubles of a quiet town. Unbeknownst to most, Aisha was not simply another shopper in need of daily provisions. Beneath her composed exterior lay a secret, a billion-dollar truth, so immense it could upend the lives of many. Though she kept it hidden, even from herself at times, there was an undeniable air of destiny around her. Her eyes, deep and reflective, hinted at memories of past struggles and future triumphs. Every subtle movement and fleeting glance seemed to whisper of a hidden world, one where fortunes were made and loyalties tested. At the counter, Marcus stood with a rigid posture that commanded authority. His eyes, sharp and calculating, never left the door as if expecting an intruder or trouble at any moment. Marcus was known throughout the small town as a man who ruled his domain with an iron fist. His voice, when it rose, carried the weight of someone who had seen too many betrayals and was unwilling to tolerate any disruption to his carefully maintained order. Yet beneath his stern exterior lay a complex tapestry of ambition, insecurity, and unspoken envy. He was a man who clung to control, fearful of the chaos that lay just beyond the surface of everyday life. As Aisha moved closer to the counter, the silence between them grew thick with tension. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Marcus cleared his throat, his tone sharp and edged with irritation. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he demanded, his words slicing through the quiet like a cold blade. Aisha met his gaze steadily, her voice soft yet firm. "I'm here to pick up what I need," she replied, her tone measured as though she had rehearsed the line 1,000 times before. The simplicity of her answer did little to ease the prickling sense of foreboding that hung between them. It was clear that both of them carried histories that were not immediately visible, a hidden depth of experience, regret, and unspoken hope. In a dim corner near the entrance, Tasha lingered silently, her presence almost ghost-like. A longtime friend and confidant of Aisha, Tasha's eyes were watchful and filled with quiet concern. She had seen the subtle shifts in Aisha's demeanor over the years, moments when a flicker of pain or determination crossed her face. Tasha knew there was more to her friend than met the eye, and she had long suspected that fate was steering Aisha toward a destiny that defied the mundane rhythms of small-town life. Now, as she watched the exchange between Aisha and Marcus, a shiver of apprehension ran through her, an instinctive warning that nothing about this night would end as simply as it had begun. The store, with its creaking floors and stale air, seemed to murmur tales of past transgressions. Every shelf, every dusty corner, was steeped in the residue of memories, of broken promises, quiet rebellions, and secrets that had been buried too deep. The very walls appeared to lean in, eager to reveal the stories of those who had crossed them. It was as if the store itself were a silent witness to the human dramas unfolding within, holding its breath for the next act of betrayal or redemption. Marcus's face darkened further as he studied Aisha. There was a glimmer of something unspoken in his eyes, a mixture of suspicion and a begrudging respect for the calm strength that emanated from her. His voice lowered into a more measured, yet still stern tone. "You know, this place isn't meant for wandering souls at night," he said, his words laced with both warning and a hint of something more personal. It was as if he believed that Aisha, with her hidden secret and quiet determination, was not entirely welcome in the orderly world he had built. Aisha's response was a slight nod, her lips tightening just enough to suggest she was holding back a torrent of emotions. "I understand," she murmured, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had faced more than her share of judgment and misunderstanding. In that brief exchange, an unspoken battle waged, a contest of wills where each tried to assert control without revealing too much of the vulnerability beneath. There was a mutual recognition in their eyes, a realization that both were soldiers in a war waged not on battlefields, but in the quiet corridors of daily life, where trust was as fragile as glass. Outside, the wind picked up its pace, rattling the window panes and casting eerie shapes upon the floor. The store's fluorescent lights flickered in time with the growing unease, as if they too were caught in the grip of an unseen force. A faint buzz of static from an old radio in the corner provided an almost rhythmic backdrop to the unfolding tension, a reminder that even in the midst of routine, life had a way of signaling impending change. Marcus stepped away from the counter for a moment, moving with deliberate slowness, as if gathering his thoughts or perhaps steeling himself against an inner turmoil he dared not show. His mind raced with memories of past encounters, of times when someone had dared to challenge his authority, only to face consequences he deemed just. There was a bitterness in his recollection, a silent protest against a world that had repeatedly tested his resolve. Yet, even as he steeled himself, there was an undeniable undercurrent of doubt. Had his rigid insistence on order ever truly kept chaos at bay, or had it only delayed the inevitable confrontation between old secrets and new ambitions? Aisha, meanwhile, moved deeper into the store, her eyes briefly catching on an array of mundane products that suddenly seemed to shimmer with hidden significance. Every object, every shadow, carried the potential for revelation. The subtle interplay of light and darkness across the surfaces seemed to mirror the inner conflict that had long defined her existence, a struggle between the desire to keep her secret hidden and the burning need to set it free. It was a secret that was as valuable as it was dangerous, a truth that could dismantle the carefully constructed lives of those who believed they had everything under control. In that charged moment, as the distant sounds of the storm mingled with the store's creaks and murmurs, the seeds of betrayal and transformation were quietly down. Marcus, with his rigid sense of authority, and Aisha, with the weight of $1 billion secret burning in her heart, were bound together by fate in a way that was both inevitable and tragic. Their destinies, intertwined in a silent dance of power and vulnerability, hinted at the coming upheaval, a collision of ideals and hidden ambitions that would soon shatter the fragile calm of their world. A sudden noise, a scuffle behind a display, broke the momentary silence, and both Marcus and Aisha turned as if drawn by an invisible thread. It was a reminder that the night was far from over, that unseen forces were at work even in the most mundane details. Tasha's eyes widened briefly as she saw a shadow flit across the far end of the store, a fleeting specter that left behind more questions than answers. It was a sign that the quiet routine of the evening was about to be disrupted by events that none of them could have foreseen. As the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the tension in the store grew palpable. Marcus returned to his post behind the counter, his fingers drumming lightly on the surface as he struggled to regain control over the simmering unrest. Aisha resumed her slow, deliberate pace, her mind racing with thoughts of the secret she guarded so fiercely. Every step she took was measured, every glance deliberate, as if she were navigating a minefield where one wrong move could trigger a cascade of irreversible events. The old clock on the wall ticked steadily, its measured rhythm echoing the heartbeat of the store, a steady reminder that time was both a silent ally and a relentless enemy. In that measured ticking, there was a sense of foreboding, as if the very seconds were conspiring to reveal truths that had long been buried. Aisha's thoughts drifted to the possibility of what might happen if her secret were to be exposed, a revelation that could unravel lives and shatter the illusion of normalcy that everyone clung to so desperately. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there was a spark of defiance in her eyes, a quiet vow that she would protect her truth at any cost. Marcus, too, felt the weight of impending change. He had built his life on the foundations of control and order, yet in the presence of Aisha's quiet determination, he could not help but sense that everything he knew was on the brink of collapse. There was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his demeanor, a softening of his rigid stance, as if he were beginning to question the very principles that had guided him for so long. In that moment, the store became a microcosm of a larger world, one where trust was fragile and every interaction carried the potential for betrayal. The atmosphere in the store was charged with a blend of fear, hope, and the unmistakable scent of change. Shadows lengthened as the evening deepened, merging into a tapestry of secrets and unspoken truths. Every whispered word, every fleeting glance, hinted at a future where loyalties would be tested and hidden agendas would come to light. It was a night of quiet reckoning, a moment when the boundaries between right and wrong blurred, and every soul was forced to confront the dark undercurrents of their own existence. In the muted interplay of light and shadow, as the store's ambience shifted from ordinary to ominous, a silent promise was made. A promise that the delicate balance of power and trust, so carefully maintained yet so easily shattered, would soon be upended by forces both seen and unseen. Aisha and Marcus, two figures cast in the same somber light, were destined to clash in a battle not just of wills, but of deep, intertwined fates. Each carried a secret that had the power to redefine their lives and the lives of those around them. As the night wore on, the store's interior seemed to breathe, each creak and sigh a prelude to the unfolding drama. The storm outside intensified, its relentless rhythm a counterpoint to the quiet storm simmering within the walls. And in that charged silence, as the past and present converged in a single, fateful moment, the first act of a larger, more turbulent story was set into motion. A story of betrayal, of hidden ambitions, and of a secret so monumental that it promised to alter the course of everything known. Aisha paused near a dusty shelf, her gaze lingering on a small, seemingly insignificant object, a token from a bygone era that had once belonged to someone whose fate was intertwined with hers. In that brief, reflective pause, she allowed herself to remember the nights spent questioning her place in a world that often seemed cold and indifferent. It was a memory that stung with both loss and defiance, a reminder that every secret, no matter how deeply buried, had a way of clawing its way to the surface when the time was right. Marcus, observing from behind the counter, felt a sudden chill that was not entirely due to the draft creeping through the store's old windows. There was something in Aisha's demeanor, a subtle shift in the light of her eyes, that made him pause, however briefly. For a moment, the harsh lines of his resolve softened, replaced by a glimmer of understanding, or perhaps regret. He quickly dismissed the thought, reasserting his control with a few sharp words to an unseen disturbance near the back of the store. Yet, that fleeting moment of vulnerability was enough to deepen the sense of impending change. The store, once a mundane establishment of commerce, had transformed into a stage where the ordinary collided with the extraordinary. Every detail, from the flickering lights to the slow, deliberate steps of its inhabitants, spoke of a truth that lay just beneath the surface, a truth that would soon ignite a chain of events no one could stop. The night was still young, but its dark promise was already beginning to reveal itself in the quiet, charged moments that passed between each heartbeat. In that lingering darkness, as the store prepared itself for the inevitable collision of hidden desires and unspoken truths, the seeds of a dramatic twist were sown. Aisha, with her secret burning like a silent fire in her soul, and Marcus, whose need for order masked a deep, inner conflict, were on a collision course with fate. Neither could foresee the magnitude of what was coming, nor the cost it would demand. But as the minutes turned into hours and the shadows deepened, one thing became clear. Nothing in that small, forgotten store would ever be the same again. And so, with the relentless ticking of the clock and the whispering echoes of the past merging with the present, the first chapter of this unfolding drama drew to a close. In the muted interplay of light and darkness, trust was already beginning to fracture, and the delicate balance of power was poised on the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into a future where every secret had its price, and every betrayal left an indelible mark on the souls of those caught in its wake. The uneasy calm of that fateful night had long since dissolved into a tension that now blanketed the store like a heavy, unyielding fog. Every day, as the first light of dawn revealed the battered storefront and the stale, anxious air within, the undercurrent of secrets and betrayal grew ever stronger. Marcus, once a man of rigid order, found himself haunted by doubts that crept in with every unexplained detail, a misplaced package here, a hushed conversation there. His mind, once clear and methodical, was now a maze of suspicions that twisted and turned with every furtive glance he stole at Aisha as she moved among the aisles. Aisha herself had become a study in cautious grace. The secret she carried, one that shimmered with the promise of billions yet weighed heavily upon her soul, forced her to navigate the store with an intensity that betrayed her calm exterior. Every measured step and every soft exhale was charged with the knowledge that her hidden truth was a flame burning in the darkness, one that could either light her way or consume her entirely. Even as the familiar hum of the store's fluorescent lights and the distant patter of rain outside served as a constant backdrop, she felt the pricking awareness of unseen eyes, as if every shadow might conceal a threat. In the midst of this growing storm, Tasha found herself straddling a treacherous line between loyalty and fear. Once, the bond between her and Aisha had been a quiet sanctuary, built on years of unspoken trust. Now, as the store's atmosphere grew increasingly charged with suspicion, that bond seemed to fray with every whispered rumor. Tasha's heart ached with the knowledge that the very secrets meant to protect Aisha might also shatter the fragile trust they had nurtured. She began to sense that even the simplest acts, a furtive phone call in a quiet corner or a soft, hurried conversation behind closed doors, carried hints of betrayal. One rain-soaked evening, as the store emptied and the chill of night seeped in through broken windows, Marcus stayed behind at the counter. The buzzing of the faulty light fixtures above did little to soothe his restless thoughts. He wandered slowly among the aisles, his eyes scanning every shelf, every darkened corner, searching for clues that might unravel the mystery of Aisha's elusive past. In a forgotten nook behind a stack of old newspapers, his fingers brushed against something hard and unexpected, a small, unmarked envelope. Its paper was rough and its seal almost faded, but inside lay documents scrawled in hurried, cryptic script. Numbers and notes danced across the pages, hinting at transactions and alliances that spanned far beyond the modest confines of the store. In that moment, Marcus realized that the quiet shopper he had dismissed so easily was in fact the keeper of a secret worth billions, a truth that could dismantle everything he had built. Even as Marcus's mind raced with questions, Aisha became increasingly aware of his shifting gaze. One afternoon, while she was meticulously arranging items on a shelf, she caught sight of him watching her from across the room. His eyes, which had once conveyed a cold, measured authority, now burned with an intensity that chilled her. There was no longer room for casual denial in his expression. His suspicion had grown too fierce, too personal. Aisha's heartbeat quickened, and she could feel the weight of his unspoken accusations pressing down upon her. She knew that every step she took now was part of a dangerous dance, a dance where one misstep could expose the secret that bound her fate. At the same time, Tasha's inner world became a battleground of guilt and regret. The sound of hushed voices and the furtive glances exchanged in the back of the store haunted her. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against the grimy window panes, Marcus cornered her in the dim light of the storeroom. His voice, usually so measured, was edged with menace. "Tasha, I need to know everything about Aisha," he demanded in a low, dangerous tone. "I found documents, proof that she's hiding something that could upend all we know. Tell me what you know." Her eyes filled with tears as she stammered, I only know that she's been secretive, that she's different. I was trying to protect her." Her voice trembled, laden with both fear and sorrow, as if each word was a betrayal in itself. Marcus's face hardened further, and the silence that followed was punctuated only by the sound of their uneven breaths. In that charged moment, Tasha realized with a jolt that the choices she'd made to keep Aisha's secret safe might have, in fact, betrayed the very trust they once shared. Days turned into weeks, and the store transformed from a modest shop into a crucible of mounting tension. The small betrayals began to accumulate, each one a tiny crack in the facade of normalcy. Marcus's investigation grew relentless. He began quietly questioning employees, reviewing security footage with an obsessive intensity, and even scouring old records for inconsistencies. Every whispered conversation and every unusual transaction added to a picture of a world steeped in hidden agendas and dangerous liaisons. How could she hide something so monumental? He muttered to himself, the bitterness in his voice echoing in the near-empty aisles. Then, on a cold twilight day, as the skies cleared only to reveal a faint, ghostly light, Marcus discovered an entry in the store's old financial logs, a series of transactions that defied explanation. The figures were astronomical, and the dates matched the times when Aisha had been alone in the store. His pulse quickened as he realized that the envelope of documents was not an isolated anomaly. It was part of an intricate web of deceit. The clues pointed to a secret that could not only disrupt the life of one quiet shopper, but could also bring down the fragile order that Marcus had so desperately tried to enforce. Later that day, as the store's usual quiet routine resumed under a tense veneer, a confrontation was unavoidable. With a storm of repressed anger and wounded pride swirling in his chest, Marcus approached Aisha near the register. His tone was low and seething with barely contained fury. "Aisha, I know there's more to you than you let on," he said, his words heavy with accusation. "I found evidence, a secret worth billions. Why hide it? Who are you really?" Aisha's eyes flickered with both defiance and sorrow. She leaned in just enough that only he could hear, replying softly, "Marcus, some truths are too dangerous to expose. What I carry is a burden and a gift, a secret born of sacrifice, and the fight for something far greater than simple money." Her voice, though calm, resonated with an intensity that belied the quiet veneer she maintained for so long. The tension between them was palpable, a collision of two worlds where duty, ambition, and hidden pain intermingled in dangerous ways. Their exchange was interrupted by the soft, desperate plea of Tasha, who had been standing silently in the shadows. "Please, both of you, this isn't the way," she said, her voice barely audible. "We're tearing each other apart when we should be trying to protect what matters." But her words, laden with regret, fell into the void of mounting distrust. In the days that followed, the conflict deepened into a swirling storm of revelations. Marcus's relentless pursuit led him to uncover more pieces of the conspiracy, a clandestine meeting hinted at in the documents, whispered references to hidden alliances, and an undercurrent of corruption that reached far beyond the modest store. He learned that Aisha's secret was not simply about a large sum of money. It was a key to a power struggle that spanned cities and involved shadowy figures who controlled destinies from behind closed doors. Each new discovery stoked the embers of his anger, yet also planted a seed of reluctant admiration for the audacity of the secret that Aisha carried. At the same time, Aisha's inner resolve was hardening. Realizing that the net of betrayal was closing in, she began to take desperate measures to protect her vital documents and the truth they held. In a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of her small room at home, she stored her most critical files, pages upon pages of evidence that chronicled years of secret meetings, covert deals, and sacrifices made in pursuit of a higher purpose. Every night, in the solitude of her safe space, Aisha would revisit these documents. The act was both an affirmation of her purpose and a somber acknowledgement of the cost that truth demanded. One particularly tense afternoon, when the storm outside had given way to cold, still drizzle, the fragile bonds among the trio began to snap. Marcus, his face etched with determination and wounded pride, confronted Tasha once more in the back office. "I heard from Samir that you were on the phone last night," whispering urgently, he said, his tone both accusing and pained. "If you know something about Aisha's secret, you must tell me now. Who are you working with?" Tasha's eyes welled with tears as she struggled to choose her words. "Marcus, I swear I only did what I thought was best. I was scared for Aisha, and scared of what might happen if the wrong people found out. I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her guilt. The room fell silent as Marcus's face twisted between anger and disbelief. For a long moment, neither spoke, the silence filled only by the sound of distant rain and the slow, steady tick of a clock that seemed to count down the seconds of their unraveling trust. As the weeks bled into each other, the store itself transformed into a living testament to betrayal and mounting tension. Every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the failing lights spoke of a hidden drama that was spiraling out of control. Rumors of a clandestine meeting in an abandoned warehouse began to circulate among the employees. Whispers in the back of the store hinted at a gathering of shadowy figures, people who moved in the dark corners of society and dealt in secrets instead of cash registers. Marcus, driven by a desperate need to piece together the puzzle, resolved to attend this meeting. He believed that if he could catch a glimpse of the hidden world behind Aisha's secret, he might finally reclaim control over a situation that had become increasingly chaotic. On the night of that fateful meeting, Marcus slipped away from the store under the cover of darkness. The abandoned warehouse loomed at the outskirts of town, its crumbling facade barely visible under a starless sky. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the murmurs of conspirators, figures cloaked in shadow, their faces hidden by the dim light of scattered lamps. Every whispered word and every furtive glance was a piece of a grand, dangerous puzzle that Marcus was desperate to solve. He found a hidden corner from which he could watch, his heart pounding as the meeting unfolded like a scene from a dark, intricate play. Back in town, as the night deepened, Aisha was also on the move. A prearranged meeting with a mysterious contact was set to take place at a quiet, out-of-the-way cafe, a temporary haven far removed from the prying eyes of those who hunted her secret. In that modest setting, warmed by soft lamplight and gentle music, Aisha met with a man whose calm authority contrasted sharply with the storm raging in her mind. "I have been waiting for you," he said in a hushed tone as he slid an envelope into her trembling hands. In that silent exchange, Aisha sensed both a promise of protection and the heavy burden of responsibility. Yet as she left the cafe, a chill crept over her, a lingering feeling that her every step was being watched and that the threads of fate were drawing inexorably toward a final, shattering reckoning. The days that followed were marked by a relentless cascade of events. Marcus's infiltration of the warehouse meeting had yielded startling revelations. Hidden among the conspirators were plans that reached far beyond mere financial gain, schemes to manipulate political alliances, to shift power among the influential, and to upend the established order that so many had taken for granted. One voice, clear and commanding, rose above the murmur of the gathering. A woman whose presence exuded both mystery and authority declared, "The time has come to reveal our true purpose. Power is not measured by wealth alone, but by the control of the narrative." Her words sent a shudder through the room, and even Marcus, concealed in the dark, felt the surge of adrenaline as he realized that Aisha's secret was but a single thread in a vast tapestry of betrayal and ambition. Meanwhile, within the store, the everyday routine had become a stage for whispered conspiracies. The familiar faces of regular customers now held a secretive gleam, as if each had caught a glimpse of the underlying chaos. The local gossip, once a benign chatter over daily transactions, now carried hints of treachery and hidden motives. Employees exchanged nervous looks and hushed comments, each wondering who among them might be the next to betray a trust already so deeply fractured. In one particularly painful moment, a trusted supplier, a man who had long delivered goods with quiet reliability, crumbled under the pressure of confession. One rainy evening, as the store's neon sign flickered in the wet darkness, he approached Marcus with a quavering voice. "They forced my hand," he sobbed. "I had to alter the records. They threatened my family." His words, raw and desperate, cut through the veneer of routine. Marcus's eyes softened for just a heartbeat before hardening again with the realization that betrayal often came from those who acted out of sheer desperation. The supplier's confession was a stark reminder that in this world of hidden truths, no one was immune to the corrosive power of fear. As each layer of deception was peeled back, the three lives at the center of this unfolding drama, Marcus, Aisha, and Tasha, began to converge on a precipice from which there was no easy return. Marcus's once unwavering belief in order was now clouded by the complexity of human frailty. Aisha, burdened by the secret that had both empowered and isolated her, faced the grim prospect that the very truth she had guarded might become the instrument of her destruction. And Tasha, her heart torn between loyalty and regret, found herself grappling with the irreversible consequences of choices made in moments of terror and uncertainty. Late one sleepless night, as the rain had finally ceased and the town lay shrouded in a quiet melancholy, Marcus sat alone in the back office, surrounded by the scattered remnants of his investigation. The documents, photographs, and coded messages were spread out before him like the puzzle pieces of a grand conspiracy that he was determined to complete. With each piece he fit into place, the realization grew that the world he thought he knew was a fragile facade held together by secrets and lies. "How far must I go to uncover the truth?" he whispered into the silence, the question hanging heavy in the still air. Across town, Aisha experienced a similar moment of introspection. In the solitude of her small room, with only the soft hum of an old fan for company, she carefully reviewed the encrypted files that chronicled her journey, a journey fraught with sacrifices and silent battles. The pages were stained with both hope and sorrow, a testament to a life lived in the shadow of a secret too enormous to fully grasp. Is the price of power too high? She wondered silently, the question echoing through the depths of her guarded heart. In that moment, The burden of her truth threatened to overwhelm her, yet it also ignited a fierce determination to reclaim control before everything was lost. Tasha, meanwhile, roamed the empty streets in a haze of regret and desperation. The cool night air did little to soothe the burning guilt that gnawed at her from within. Every step she took was a reminder of the trust that had been broken, of the promises made, and the sacrifices that had been betrayed. In the mirror of a shuttered storefront, she saw not only her own reflection, but the faces of every person she had let down. "How do I make amends?" she pleaded silently to the night, knowing that some wounds might never fully heal. As the days wore on, the ripples of betrayal and mounting revelations spread outward, infecting even the mundane corners of the town. The store, once a quiet haven of routine commerce, now thrummed with an undercurrent of danger and expectation. Every creak in the floorboards, every whispered conversation behind closed doors was imbued with the knowledge that the final act of this dark drama was drawing near. In the charged moments before dawn, when the world was still suspended between night and day, Marcus, Aisha, and Tasha each found themselves standing at the crossroads of fate. Their lives, once separate and uncomplicated, were now interwoven in a tapestry of secrets, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The bitter lessons of the past mingled with the desperate hope for redemption, and in that crucible of emotion, the final questions began to take shape. Could trust ever be restored after so many scars had been left behind? And was the price of exposing the truth one they were all willing to pay? The store, its walls heavy with the echoes of whispered confessions and unspoken regrets, waited in breathless silence for the next move. In that timeless moment, as the first pale rays of morning light crept over the horizon and danced across the worn floor, the fate of all that had been lost, and all that could yet be saved, hung in the balance. The rising tension, the betrayals both small and monumental, and the shocking twists that had upended their lives were not just chapters in a story. They were the very heartbeat of a new reality, one in which every secret had its price, and every act of betrayal left an indelible mark on the souls of those who dared to trust. And so, with the coming of a new day and the silent promise of change in the air, the three of them, Marcus, Aisha, and Tasha, stepped forward into an uncertain future. The legacy of that dark, turbulent period would forever bind them together, a reminder that in a world built on hidden truths and fragile loyalties, nothing was ever as it seemed, and every revelation carried the potential to shatter lives. In the quiet moments before the town stirred awake, as the store's lights flickered one last time before steadying into routine, the question remained: how far would each of them go to protect the truth, and what sacrifices would they be forced to make when loyalty and betrayal collided in the relentless march of fate? The answers, like the secrets they guarded, lay hidden in the depths of a future that had already begun to take shape, a future defined by rising tension, unexpected betrayals, and the ever-present possibility that the price of truth might be higher than any of them were prepared to pay. The storm had finally subsided, leaving behind a heavy, trembling silence over the deserted streets. In the store's dim interior, the atmosphere was charged with an intensity that no flickering light or creaking board could disguise. The final act was unfolding. Outside, puddles mirrored a sky slowly clearing from dark thunderclouds, while inside, every shadow seemed to murmur secrets of betrayal and shifting loyalties. Aisha stood behind the counter, her dark eyes fixed on the door as if expecting fate to burst through at any moment. Her posture was both defiant and fragile, each breath measured, each heartbeat resonating with the weight of her billion-dollar secret. For months, she had carried that secret like a burning ember in her soul, a truth that promised power and peril in equal measure. Tonight, it was all coming to a head. Marcus emerged from the back room with an expression that wavered between cold authority and raw, seething anger. His face, usually so controlled, now betrayed a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Aisha," he said in a low, quivering tone that barely masked his fury, "it ends tonight. I have seen enough, and I want the truth, no more lies." His words struck the silence like a sudden crash, echoing off the worn walls as if demanding justice for the betrayals that had festered too long. Before Aisha could respond, a hesitant voice joined the confrontation from behind the counter. Tasha stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears and remorse. I have to say something," she stammered. The three of them, Marcus, Aisha, and Tasha, formed a tight triangle in the center of the store, the air heavy with the tension of all the secrets that had been hidden in plain sight. Aisha's hands trembled slightly as she met Marcus's accusing stare. Marcus, you have been so determined to unearth something that you never care to ask why I guarded it so fiercely, she said, her voice soft but edged with a power that belied her quiet tone. This secret isn't just about money. It's about something far greater, a truth that could either free us or destroy everything we know. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Free you? Destroy me? All I've seen are your lies. I found the documents, the ledger that proves you've been dealing in powers that you can't even comprehend. His voice rose, each word punctuated by years of pent-up anger and betrayal. Tasha's face crumpled as she took a hesitant step closer to Aisha. Please, both of you listen, she pleaded. I never wanted it to come to this. Her voice broke as she fought the urge to run, and in that moment, the truth that had been too painful to admit spilled out in a rush of raw confession. I betrayed you, Aisha. I was afraid, and I thought I could protect you by sharing your secret with Marcus. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. The store's silence deepened with her admission. For a long, heavy moment, the only sound was the soft, irregular hum of a faulty light overhead. Marcus's eyes, which had burned with indignation only moments before, now flickered with something like disbelief and regret. Tasha, he said quietly, why? You were the one who knew her better than anyone. How could you do this? Tasha's tears fell silently as she looked between the two figures. I was scared. I was scared of what would happen if the secret came to light and hurt all of us. I thought I could control it, manage the fallout, but I was wrong. I see that now. Her words seemed to hang in the air like a fragile truce before a storm. Aisha took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with both sorrow and fierce determination. Marcus, you must understand, she said, her voice wavering with the effort of keeping her composure. I never wanted anyone to suffer because of what I carry. This secret, it's a legacy of betrayal and sacrifice, one that was forced upon me long before any of us met. I have guarded it because I believed it could be used to set things right, to expose corruption and injustice that runs deep in our society. Marcus scoffed, his anger momentarily softening into incredulity. Set things right, or serve your own ambition. All this time, you've been playing a dangerous game, and now Tasha's confession only confirms what I feared, that there are no loyalties here, only power and greed. In the sudden pause that followed, the store seemed to hold its breath. The tension was nearly palpable as Aisha reached slowly into her bag and withdrew a thin, worn folder. Its edges were frayed, and the paper inside was filled with detailed, cryptic notes, financial records, and secret correspondences. Marcus, she said in a measured tone, look at this. Look at the real truth. She slid the folder across the counter with deliberate care, as if each document contained the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Marcus hesitated only for a moment before snatching the folder from her. His eyes scanned the pages, and with every line he read, the color drained from his face. The evidence was undeniable, a carefully orchestrated plan to siphon funds, manipulate political favors, and maintain a system that thrived on exploitation. But what cut deepest was the revelation that many of those responsible were not strangers, but people he had once trusted, including himself in moments of weakness. His hands shook as he clutched the folder to his chest, a mixture of rage, remorse, and disbelief churning within him. Aisha continued, her voice rising slightly with the urgency of her conviction. Marcus, you have been blind to the rot at the heart of our society. The secret I carried was not meant to bring harm. It was meant to expose the very system that made betrayal a way of life. I carried it because I believed that the truth could be a weapon against those who abuse power. And now, it seems, that weapon has turned against us all. In that charged moment, Marcus's fury seemed to reach its zenith. So what now? He demanded, his tone both bitter and desperate. You expect me to let go of all my years of control? To just accept that everything I built is part of a lie? His voice cracked, the anger giving way to a raw, almost pleading quality. Tell me, Aisha, how do we fix this mess when everything we knew has been shattered? Aisha's eyes locked with his, and in them he saw the reflection of all the sleepless nights, the unbearable burdens of secrets, and the fierce hope that truth might still redeem them. We can't fix it, she admitted softly. Not completely. The truth is like shattered glass. It cuts deep, and even when you try to piece it back together, the scars remain. But maybe, just maybe, if we acknowledge the pain and the betrayal, we can learn something from it. We can learn that trust once broken is never the same again, and that power, when used without compassion, is a curse. Marcus's face contorted with conflicting emotions. The evidence in his hands, the confessions, and the weight of his own complicity in the system he had upheld were too overwhelming to deny. His voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. "What have we become?" he asked, the rhetorical question hanging heavy in the air. "What price do we pay when we sacrifice our morals for the illusion of control?" For a long moment, none of them spoke. The store seemed to become a sanctuary for their collective pain, a silent witness to lives irrevocably altered by betrayal and the relentless march of fate. Outside, the first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, bathing the world in a pale, uncertain light. The long, dark night had given way to a new day, yet none of them felt its promise of renewal. Instead, each of them was left to grapple with the bitter taste of truth and the irreversible consequences of their actions. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, a voice, quiet, firm, and laden with finality, broke the silence. It was Aisha's voice, but it carried an authority that seemed to transcend her previous vulnerability. "Marcus, Tasha," she said, her tone resolute, "the secret I carried was never about the money or the power it could bring. It was a reminder of how deep the corruption goes. Is proof that every person, no matter how seemingly strong, can be tainted by the lure of power and the ease of betrayal." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of those who had once believed themselves above reproach. Marcus's eyes filled with tears as he realized that his quest for order had been built on a foundation of lies, and Tasha's expression crumpled with the weight of regret. In that moment, the roles they had played, the pursuer, the betrayer, the keeper of secrets, became painfully clear. They were all victims of a system that rewarded deceit and punished integrity. A sudden crash of sound from the front of the store startled them. The heavy door swung open with a bang, and in the doorway stood a figure cloaked in the remnants of the night's darkness. It was a man they had never seen before, a tall, gaunt presence with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through the veneer of pretense. His arrival was as unexpected as it was ominous, and for a moment, time itself seemed to pause in anticipation of what would come next. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and defiance. The stranger offered no immediate reply. Instead, he stepped forward slowly, his gaze fixed on Aisha. "I have come for what is rightfully mine," he said in a voice that was both calm and chilling. His words sent a ripple of unease through the room. It was as if his presence alone unspooled yet another thread of fate, a thread that could unravel everything they had tried to hold on to. Aisha's eyes widened as she recognized something in the man's expression, a familiarity that chilled her to the core. "No," she whispered almost to herself, "this can't be happening." For a split second, the past and present converged in her mind. The secret she had guarded, the promise of redemption it carried, now seemed to twist into something unrecognizable, a dark inheritance from a legacy she had never chosen, but that had always haunted her steps. The stranger took another deliberate step forward. "Your secret is not a blessing," he intoned, "but a curse that has bound you to a fate you cannot escape." His words, laced with bitter finality, resonated with the hidden truths in the room. Tasha's face went pale as she realized that the confrontation had now expanded beyond the boundaries of their own fractured lives. Marcus's grip on the folder tightened, as though it were a lifeline in the sudden, overwhelming tide of revelations. Marcus's voice, shaky and uncertain, finally broke through the tension. "What do you want?" "Who are you?" he demanded once more, his earlier anger now transformed into desperate curiosity. The stranger's eyes swept over the trio, Marcus, Aisha, and Tasha, before he spoke again, his tone heavy with an unspoken history. "I am the keeper of the truth that you have long tried to hide. I represent those who were betrayed long before any of you took your first steps in this sordid dance of power. And now, the time has come for reckoning." Aisha stepped forward, her heart pounding as she met the stranger's gaze. "Reckoning? What reckoning?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tumult within. "I have carried this secret with the hope that it might one day bring justice, not ruin. I have believed that truth, no matter how painful, could set us free. But if you are here to take it from me, to use it as a weapon against us all, then I will not let you." For a heartbeat, the store was silent, the air thick with a mix of defiance, fear, and uncertain hope. Then, in a voice that broke the stillness like shattered glass, the stranger replied, "The truth is never a gift, It is a burden, and its price is paid in full. Tonight, you will all face the consequences of your choices." With those words, he turned and strode toward the door as if beckoning fate to follow him. Marcus, still clutching the folder as if it were his only shield against the encroaching darkness, called after him, "What are you saying? What consequences?" But the stranger did not answer. Instead, he disappeared into the pale light of the early morning, leaving behind a silence so profound it seemed to press in on every soul in the store. In the aftermath of the stranger's departure, the three stood frozen, their hearts pounding in unison, as if in shared dread. Marcus's anger had subsided into a hollow regret, while Tasha's eyes shone with the unspoken terror of having betrayed those she once vowed to protect. Aisha, though shaken, stood tall. In that moment, she understood that her secret had grown beyond her control, a force that now demanded retribution from all who had touched it. "Marcus," Aisha said softly, her voice carrying a mournful resolve, "I have always believed that the truth would be our salvation. But now I see that it is also our undoing. What have we done? What have we become in our desperate attempts to wield power over our own lives?" Her words, laden with both sorrow and defiance, seemed to echo in the quiet store as if challenging each of them to confront their own inner demons. Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and dawning understanding. "I wanted to control it all, to use the truth as a tool to keep order in a world that was falling apart," he admitted in a voice barely audible. "But now, standing here, I realize that order built on lies is nothing but an illusion. Can you forgive me, Aisha, for the part one played in this treachery?" Aisha's gaze softened, and for a moment, the raw pain of betrayal gave way to the possibility of redemption. "I do not know if forgiveness is possible," she replied quietly, "but I do know that we must face the consequences of our actions, however harsh they may be." Her eyes then swept over Tasha, whose silent tears spoke of endless regret. "And you, Tasha, what will you say for your betrayal? How do we mend the broken pieces of trust when one of us has shattered it completely?" Tasha's voice came out in a broken whisper. "I never meant to hurt you, Aisha. I was wrong, I was so wrong. I thought I was protecting you, but in the end, I only caused more pain. I wish I could take it all back." Her words, fragile as glass, carried the burden of remorse and the knowledge that some wounds might never heal. The conversation was interrupted by the soft hum of the morning light filtering through grimy windows. The storm outside had left a quiet calm, yet inside, the tempest still raged in their hearts. Aisha stepped away from the counter and moved toward a small, dust-covered mirror hanging on the wall. Staring at her reflection, she saw the scars of betrayal etched into her face, lines that spoke of nights filled with fear and days shadowed by the burden of a secret too heavy to bear. In that reflective silence, Aisha spoke, almost as if addressing an unseen audience. "What would you do if you were betrayed by those you trusted most? When every secret becomes a chain that binds you, when every lie digs deeper into your soul, how do you choose between the desire for justice and the need for forgiveness?" Her words, soft yet piercing, invited anyone who might be listening to question the very nature of loyalty and truth. Marcus moved to join her by the mirror, his reflection merging with hers. "Perhaps," he said, "the cost of truth is not in the revelation itself, but in the scars it leaves behind. We are all complicit in our own undoing, each of us making choices that, while intended to protect, only serve to tear us apart." His voice was heavy with regret and a dawning realization that the path he had chosen was one of destruction, not salvation. Tasha stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached out and touched Aisha's shoulder. "Maybe," she whispered, "the only way to begin healing is to accept that some betrayals are irreversible. We must live with our choices and let the truth, however painful, guide us towards something better, even if that better is just a glimpse of redemption in the midst of darkness." In that moment, as the three figures stood together in the quiet store, haunted by the consequences of their actions and the relentless march of fate, a fragile hope began to glimmer. It was a hope born not of triumph over evil, but of the bittersweet acknowledgement that even in the darkest betrayals, there might be a path toward understanding. Yet the truth remained an ever-present specter, a reminder that every secret demanded its price, and that every act of betrayal left behind scars that time could only dull, not erase. As the first full light of day broke through the grime on the windows, the store's silence became a canvas upon which the remnants of the night were painted in shades of sorrow and quiet resolve. The documents that Marcus held, the whispered apologies of Tasha, and the burdened secret of Aisha were no longer just isolated pieces of a hidden puzzle. They had become the living testimony of a world where power and betrayal walked hand in hand, leaving no heart untouched by their consequences. Aisha took one last look at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes searching for a sign of the woman she once was before the weight of secrets transformed her into something both formidable and fragile. "I once believed," she murmured, "that truth could save us all. But now I see that truth is a double-edged sword, cutting deep even as it illuminates the darkness. Is it worth the price? Can we ever truly be free when the scars of betrayal are etched into our very souls?" Marcus, his voice quiet and haunted, responded, "Freedom comes not from denying the past, but from accepting it, the pain, the guilt, and even the love that once drove us to seek control. Perhaps what we need is not forgiveness from others, but forgiveness from ourselves." Tasha, her eyes red and determined, added, "We are all flawed, all bound by our own secrets and missteps. Maybe the real challenge is learning to live with the truth, no matter how bitter it tastes, and finding a way to move forward, even if that forward means carrying these scars as a reminder of what we once lost." As the morning unfolded and the world outside began its slow awakening, the trio felt the inevitability of change. The storm had passed, but its echoes would remain, whispering in every creak of the floor, every flicker of the failing light, every silent tear shed in moments of reflection. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the remnants of betrayal and the weight of choices that could never be undone. Yet in that uncertainty lay a fragile promise that from the ruins of broken trust, something new might yet be born, a future where the painful truths of the past could serve as a guide toward a more honest, if imperfect, existence. And so, with the dawn as both a beginning and an end, the three stepped out of the store into a world forever changed by the revelations of the night. Marcus clutched the folder close to his heart, a reminder of the price of ambition and the destructive power of unchecked authority. Tasha walked beside Aisha, her silent apologies and regret a constant reminder of the cost of misplaced loyalty. And Aisha, burdened by a secret that had grown far beyond its original purpose, carried within her the bittersweet knowledge that truth, while a weapon, was also a mirror reflecting the dark recesses of the human soul. In the soft light of day, as the streets slowly filled with the murmur of daily life, a final, lingering question echoed through the quiet. What would you have done if you were betrayed by someone you trusted? Would you cling to the illusion of control, or would you dare to face the truth, scars and all? The answers were not simple, and the scars would remain long after the echoes of that fateful night faded into memory. But in the silent, enduring search for redemption, there was a spark of hope, a hope that even in the darkest corners of betrayal, the human heart could find a way to forgive, to rebuild, and ultimately, to learn that sometimes the most painful truths are the ones that set us free. And so, as the day marched on and the world spun beneath the weight of unspoken confessions, the legacy of that long, turbulent night would linger, a testament to the complexity of power, betrayal, and the fragile nature of trust. In the end, none of them emerged unscathed, but perhaps in the raw honesty of their broken reflections, they discovered that even shattered lives can forge a path toward a new kind of truth, a truth that demands nothing less than our full, imperfect selves. In that quiet moment of introspection, as the store's door closed behind them and the soft murmur of the morning grew into a steady rhythm of life, Aisha's final words floated on the air like a benediction and a warning. The truth cuts deep, but it is the only light that can guide us out of the darkness. Remember this, trust is fragile, and every secret carries its own price. Will you pay that price, or will you let it break you? Her voice, carrying the weight of all that had been lost and the promise of something yet to be understood, lingered long after the echoes had faded. And as the world continued its relentless journey into the unknown, the question remained, a question meant to spark reflection in every heart that dared to seek the truth amidst the ruins of betrayal. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.